news that's coming in. Now, Prime Minister Modi, in an interview with a French newspaper, said, and I quote, "I see India as a strong shoulder for the global south." In this rare interview with the foreign media, the Prime Minister insisted on India's role as a bridge between the global south and the Western world. Remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has already left from New Delhi for his two-day France visit. He is also the guest of honor at the Bastille Day parade, where the Indian contingent will also be taking part in the parade. In fact, he will also be having bilateral talks with French President Emmanuel Macron, and several deals are on the agenda of his visit. He will also be talking to the Indian diaspora in France, and he will also be meeting his French counterpart as well as the President of the Senate. So Prime Minister Modi is currently on his way to France. He left from New Delhi at 6:50 a.m. today, and he is slated to reach France at 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and after which he has a full packed itinerary for today. Tomorrow, it's the French Day, and there will be a Bastille Day parade in France, in which Prime Minister Modi will be the guest of honor. It is very rare that France invites foreign guest of honors to the Bastille Day parade. The last time a foreign guest of honor was invited was US President Donald Trump in 2017. Our senior editor Pallavi Ghosh is joining us on this story. Pallavi, a very good morning to you. Could you tell us more about this interview of Prime Minister Modi with the French newspaper?
See, basically, as we all know, the Prime Minister had already left for France, and he should be arriving there India time at 4 p.m. And this interview that he's given to a French newspaper, he talks about the 25 years of the close relationship between India and France, and he talks about the close cooperation that both the countries have had, whether it's in the sphere of economics, defense, culture, social, and so on and so forth. It essentially lays a benchmark for what is short but a very, very important meeting between the Prime Minister and his French counterpart. There are going to be important defense deals which are going to be signed, trade deals, of course, apart from this. But more importantly, the stress on terrorism that, in this growing world, post-COVID economy, both the countries have to work closely together. And more than that, I think the Prime Minister being given that importance as a chief guest at the Bastille Day celebrations, and that there is going to be an Indian Air Force contingent participating. That is also, I think, an attempt being made by India to show its defense potential. All of this, much of it has been captured in this interview which has been given by the Prime Minister.
Also, Pallavi, what is also interesting to note is that the Bastille Day is also coinciding with the 25th anniversary of India and France strategic partnership.
Yes, I mean, he talks about that. He mentions the fact in that interview, and even in his departure statement, he very much focused on this fact that it's been 25 years of very good cooperation and good relations with it. And the Bastille Day celebration is also celebrating that. And that's why France also thought it fit to invite the Prime Minister to be the guest of honor, which of course is very rare, it's considered to be, but also a huge acceptance by France of India's potential as a growing country, economy as well. And Prime Minister does make a reference to, even after 25 years, we are looking forward to many, many more years of close cooperation and ties between the two.
Also, Pallavi, can you tell us about his itinerary for today in France?
So basically, the Prime Minister lands at around 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time. There are three programs which are essentially important. One, of course, is going to be given a ceremonial welcome. And the second, of course, is the state dinner, which is going to be having later tonight. And, of course, the meeting he has with the Indian diaspora. That's always been the hallmark of his interactions whenever he goes abroad. Because the point that he tries to make is that they are ambassadors of a country. And whatever is India's growth story, whatever is our talent and caliber, is something which is used by the Indian diaspora wherever they are settled, and they're contributing to the economy of where they've settled down on. So these are the main three focus which is going to take place. And then, of course, the Prime Minister goes on to take part as a guest of honor at the Bastille Day celebrations tomorrow.
Also, Pallavi, a lot of defense deals are also on the cards. Could you tell our viewers about that as well?
Well, Rafale deals are the ones, at least 26 of them, we are being told, are going to be inked between India and France. This is interesting because while we keep on focusing on even Atmanirbharta or self-reliance as far as defense is concerned, the defense minister has often spoken, and the Prime Minister himself, on indigenous defense equipment being manufactured right over here in the country. But at the same time, there's also acknowledgement of the fact that, countries like France, Germany, we have to have signed defense deals with them because of the superiority in that area. So these are one of the main deals which are going to be signed as a part of the GLC between India and France.
Also, Pallavi, after the successful PM Modi's White House state visit, now comes this France trip, which also marks an era of intensifying engagement between India and the Western powers. Your take on this?
Yeah, diplomatic relations always become very critical and important, and especially in the post-COVID world, where I think what has been is like a level playing field. There are countries who are in Europe who are still trying to grapple with the post-COVID reality, and in that sense, India has always projected itself as one country who are able to, one, come to terms with it. Second, our own vaccination program, for example, has been fairly successful. In fact, France was one of the most horrible images were coming out from there as far as the COVID situation was concerned. I mean, those hospitals, for example, were not able to deal with, not much availability of vaccines. India's vaccine program has been hailed to be largely successful, not only indigenously, but also we have, under the whole vaccine Maitri, idea, have exported our vaccines to many countries, and also slowly our economy is seeing a post-COVID economic green shooting. I think in this changed scenario, the point which India makes in its diplomatic overtures is very simple. Yes, you consider yourself to be a developed country, but India can no longer be looked upon as a third world country.
Also, Pallavi, India is deepening defense ties with the Western powers such as United States and France comes amid growing Chinese assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region.
India, in fact, raised this issue when it was in America, and I'm sure it will be raised in France. I mean, America, of course, as you all know, has a huge aversion to China, and India, of course, has raised alarm bells over the Chinese trying to intrude into our economy and Chinese goods being, for example, at one point of time flooded into our markets. And also China attempts at making incursions into the northeast areas, for example, Arunachal Pradesh for that matter. Terrorism, I think, is going to be one of the main hallmarks of the bilateral talks in France, because France too has been a victim of that. I mean, just recently we saw, for example, the kind of outrage we saw on the streets of Paris. Of course, that's a different case it was. But France has been, and Western world too, has been a victim of acts of terror. So this is one thing which binds many of the countries, the so-called developed and the so-called developing countries, is terrorism. And India is going to raise this problem. And then also the fact is that countries like China and Pakistan try to embolden the terrorists. And that, I think, is something which many of the Western countries too are worried about.
Right, Pallavi.